Hello, and welcome to this edition of the Sparx Tribune Report. My name is Devin Jones, and you can find me on Twitter at the user handle provided in the description box below, along with where you can find me on the interwebs at sparkstribune.org. That is Sparks, spelled Sparks with an X, sparkstribune.org. And the first item on the agenda today is with regard to Chelsea Manning and the Julian Assange case. Um, Chelsea Manning has refused to testify against Julian Assange, and for which she has been charged with what the judge referred to as contempt of court. This would be, one would imagine, against her Fifth Amendment right to not testify at all, albeit being hit with contempt of court, the charge, contempt of court. She has been fined over $400,000 and sentenced to another year in prison. Again, being charged with contempt of court for refusing to testify against Julian Assange in the WikiLeaks case. Second on the agenda for today, the 2020 candidates. According to a poll, most recent poll, a YouGov poll, has Biden yet again in the lead at 22% of the total field of 24 candidates vying for the nomination for to challenge Donald Trump in the general election in 2020. This poll has Biden at 22%, leading who is in second place, Warren, at 16%, Sanders third place at 13%, with both Harris and Buttigieg tied for fourth place, each having 8% of the total. This poll notably only polled 1,500 candidates, and considering that they only polled 1,500 candidates, this should bring to the forefront the question of who was targeted by said polls. If you poll only 1,500 candidates, then the targeting of that poll becomes of more of an immense issue than should it have been a poll polling 10,000 or 15,000 polls, as many polls have previously done. 1,500, one would question whether the polls, as I have stated before, were targeting all of the landlines in Iowa. So question the results of these polls when you see them, and especially one that, look how many people were polled. And it almost never, as in the case of this poll, I checked, they did not tell you who was targeted, what the demographic was that was polled for this. They don't tell you. They just say that it polled 1,500 adults, not stating how. Third and finally on the agenda for today is an issue plaguing most of us, plaguing all of us as a threat to justice. Anywhere is a threat to justice, everywhere. This being an issue that has taken on a rather two-faced edge in politics today, particularly on the left, where some on the left consider it the best and brightest idea to disarm the proletariat in the face of reactionary politics and immediate catastrophe. On this issue, Bill de Blasio was grilled by Sean Hannity on this very subject. Sean Hannity specifically asked him a very pointed question, because it's recognized that we should have background checks and we should make sure that only the mentally healthy are allowed to obtain firearms. But in being directly asked, should someone be deemed safe? Should they pass the background check, whatever psychological test that you wanted? Does that stable individual have the right to bear arms? Bill de Blasio even obfuscated that question, not stating exactly that even someone who was mentally sound or passed a background check necessarily had the right to bear arms, obviously flying in the face of the Second Amendment. But that should bring up one particular issue, because when asked about this issue, in the very pointed question, Sean Hannity even said, should that person pass a psychological test, whatever background checks you wanted, does that subsequent individual have the right? And that question was obfuscated at the behest of Bill de Blasio, who said they have the right to be safe. Well, that's a very ambiguous term. What does it mean to be safe? Well, that wasn't stated, even though he was pressured multiple times by Hannity, who everyone watching this channel should know I'm not a big fan of. But nonetheless, it's a pointed issue and one of concern, as again, I don't feel it the best and brightest idea to disarm the proletariat, particularly in the face of such a dangerous right wing posing immediate and sometimes physical threats. But on the same issue, Sanders was a bit more particular, as something else that happened in recent politics. Bernie Sanders went on the Joe Rogan show, the Joe Rogan Experience, and Joe Rogan pressed Senator Sanders on the same issue, namely gun control. He more explicitly, Sanders more explicitly stated, and I quote, "I believe in the Second Amendment." He did advocate for what he referred to as an assault weapons ban, but Joe Rogan pressed him on one particular issue, namely that there are 400 million, supposedly, according to Joe Rogan, and this fact was not contested by Senator Sanders, that there were 400 million um, uh, weapons, that there were 400 million guns in the hands of Americans already. And that the point being, whatever you do with guns in the future, whatever bans you implement, whether they continue to be manufactured for public consumption or not, that there are currently 400 million weapons available to the American public, and what do we do about those? And questioned Sanders as to whether or not he wanted to confiscate those weapons via the FBI or whatever. Sanders was not very specific, but he said, and I quote, "I don't think that the FBI will be going door to door confiscating weapons," and not being very clear on that issue as well. But Joe Rogan does bring up one particularly valid point, in that there are currently 400 million guns in the hands of Americans right now, and that an assault weapons ban is not going to do anything but, halt or slow the process of future consumption of firearms by the American public. But and again, to throw in my own personal opinion here on this issue, it is not a mentally healthy person that shoots up a school in the first place, with or without access to any particular firearms. You can assault someone with any variety of any number of weapons. It is not a mentally healthy person that shoots up a school or a church or a Walmart. That is not a mentally healthy or a sane individual, to say the least. So therefore, I ask you, which is the more intelligent idea? To take some weapons from everyone at the behest of the mentally insane, which they obviously are, or to take all of the weapons from the mentally insane, which makes more sense? Just ask yourself that, and you have a nice evening. Again, my name is Devin Jones, and this has been the Sparx Tribune Report. Again, I will link to my Twitter handle in the description box below, along where you can find me at Sparx Tribune, spell Sparks with an X, sparxtribune.org, and you have a wonderful day.